good. All right. Okay. I'm sorry about that. So, how to rebuild resiliency? And if you don't know who I am, and if you don't remember, or if you didn't see my presentation, I'll tell you a little bit more about myself. I graduated medical school in Europe in 1993. Specialized in gynecology and endocrinology. When I came to America, I did medical boards, took medical boards in 2005. And when I was taking my medical boards, I worked in American medical system and realized that it had different approach to treat diseases. So I decided to go to different road to help people, and I graduated Institute for Integrative Nutrition in 2013 and become holistic health practitioner. And now I call myself as a lifestyle doctor. And I went to different organizations for training, Institute for Mind Body Therapy in 2015, Functional Medicine in 2018, become detox practitioner in 2018, and latest certification is in epigenetics. I'm very passionate about that. So I had my own stress story. When I was studying for my medical boards and working too many jobs, I became very ill. And my story starts with a bruise on my head and on my butt when I collapsed one Saturday morning in my bathroom while getting ready for my weekend jobs. When I was very scared in that moment, in that instance, when I'll call in sick and slept for 24 hours, but I was really concerned about my health. When I started evaluating my life, I realized that I had a stressful lifestyle. I worked multiple jobs to support my two children and a husband who lost his job. I barely had the time to sleep and to eat. Of course, I didn't relax, so I didn't exercise. I was even falling asleep on the traffic light while getting back home from my long day of different jobs. And only chocolate could sustain me, give me happiness, and I ate sweets a lot. I had to drink multiple cups of coffee a day just to stay awake. So I created a lot of problems in my body. I had exercise-induced asthma, I had gastritis, I had migraines, acne. So I struggle a lot. And when I went to doctors, they couldn't help me. They said, well, your labs looks pretty good. You don't have any diagnosable diseases, but I still didn't feel well. And I start to look for different sources. I start researching and went to a road of self-development, self-discovery, and healing. And after a certain time, particularly what I learned, it's about toxins that are around us and how they can affect our body and how stress related, our lifestyle and work balance and everything else. So how it affects our body and how it affects our health. And when I help myself, when I recover and my patient become to share this knowledge with other people. And So I created a program that I use for myself to heal, and now I use to heal other people or help them to heal themselves, I would say. And I don't believe that you can completely heal yourself if you do not approach your health on all these different levels, on chemicals, biological, physical, spiritual, emotional, mental, and energetic. And now conventional medicine usually use physical, chemical, and biological levels of healing. So, and they never mention spiritual, emotional, mental. If it's mental disease, yes, but energetic, no. So, and they don't believe in those kind of level of healing. So it's very linear approach to health. And I believe in preventions and healing on the different levels. So why, and you know the health crisis that we live now, why do we live in that crisis? Why do we have so many conditions, diseases that we struggle in as a society, as a culture, and even around the globe? We know that children get sick earlier and earlier, women get breast cancer even in their 20s. It's unbelievable, particularly for last maybe 10 years. And of course, this pandemic does not help us. It's all exaggerate all problems. And for example, anxiety, depression increased from 28% before pandemic up to 40% now during the pandemic. Suicidal ideation and suicides increase in incidents, and also domestic violence, and also drug abuse and alcohol abuse increase all tremendously, and all due to tremendous stress that we experience now. So how I approach diseases is from this principle of three-legged stool. To create disease or arise disease in the body, or even disbalances first before disease label, we need to approach our body or our health from this three-legged stool. And on the top of the stool, of course, it's a diet, nourishment that nourish our body, and what you eat can create a disease or can heal your body. So it's very important. And in America, most of the people eat standard American diet, or I call it a set diet. And it's feed all these three legs of the stool. So first leg, it's a genetic expression. We have genes from our mom and dad that predispose us to different conditions and diseases, but genes, it's only genes load the gun, but environment that we live and those genes live create a disease. So genes load the gun, but environment pulls the trigger. It's not necessary that if you have any genetic predisposition, you're gonna create that particular disease, like for example, diabetes or heart disease or cancer. So you can prevent if you know your genetics. Next, and of course, diet, it fits to that leg, because now we know a lot about genetics and also nutrigenetics, nutrigenomics. It's mean that how our food affect genes and how genes affect that what food we consume, how we assimilate that food. So it's a big topic, and I'm very passionate to talk about it. And I have separate presentations and educate people on the genes. And also I consult on your genes if you take a test. Next leg of the disease creation is a microbiome. We cannot address enough that, and particularly latest discovery about microbiome. It's what we live on, actually. So microbe in our gut, it can be bacteria, viruses, parasites, they sustain our life. And if we do not feed them properly, they can change their balance, pathogenic and normal bacteria, and they can create diseases in our body, because everything that we eat, all nutrients come from the microbiome that process that food that we consume. So the healthiest, the more healthy you eat, the better bugs we create. And if we don't eat good food that they need, they can die and not sustain us properly. So again, food and diet play a big role to feed that microbiome, to sustain that leg of the stool. And last leg that I'm also very passionate about, it's stressors, and we talk about those stresses a lot during the summit. And today I will talk about how stressors affect your body by creating stress, and how stress affect everything in the body. So, and again, stressors can be from food, because toxic food, as we know around us, create stress in the body, and that's how our body reacts. And environmental stressors and physical stressors. So how do you associate with stress? I would like to ask you a question. When you hear the word stress, what do you think about it, or how it's related to you? You can put in the chat, and I'd like to that presentation be very interactive. So if you have a chance, please put in the chat if you hear word stress, or how stress associated with you, what do you think? So how stress affects you, or how do you perceive stress? So anything that's related to stress, you can put in the chat, and I would like to see how it's related to you. And let's see, some people might comment. Okay, Anita said, I get itchy and tired. So that's a symptom of stress. Okay, what kind of stressors you might have in your life? Like, where do you see, what do you see as a stressor in your life? You can put in the chat. And you can still chat in, and I'm gonna continue with the presentation because we have a lot to cover. And Hungarian scientist coined something happened with my pointer. Okay, go back. So Hungarian scientist that lived in Canada coined point stress in 1936. It's non-specific response of the body to any demand for change. So there is, because stress can be in different kind of symptoms in the body. He said it's a non-specific response, but I will show you later what kind of responses we can expect from the body reaction to stress. And anything that create demand in our body can be seen as a stressors. For example, any infection or any even posture, incorrect posture for the body can create stress. So when body struggle with anything, it is a stress for the body, and bodies start stress response. So stress can be both positive and negative. And before we go to that slide, I would like you to have a test for stress. So how stressed are you? If you, if anybody of here fill out this questionnaire when I send it to you, do you have any total score? So if anybody did that questionnaire, please post your score here, and I'm gonna go over that score. If you did not fill out this questionnaire, you can do it now in a few minutes, and I'll wait for you here. Just put a score for each question and total that score. And I will tell you how your body cope with that stress, and how your adrenals respond to that stress. So do you see? Okay, you probably don't see it. So let's see, stop share my presentation. And I'm gonna share my questionnaire. Did anybody fill out this before the presentation, before coming to the our presentation? Because I sent this questionnaire with your email. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you have that total, just put it in the chat, and I'll tell you what your score means. Okay. So if you didn't, this is the questions. Okay. So if you can do it briefly. So Anita respond also to what stress, how she perceives stress. So it's a family dynamic, divorce and daughter's health, and my health too. So yes, any physical health creates stress in the body, of course. Physical, mental health, also environmental toxins that I talk a lot in the summit. So Kim's score is okay. I won't tell you personally. I'm gonna show you the screen where the score total, and you can associate yourself with that score. So I'll give you a few more minutes to answer questions. Okay, so reveal the numbers. So if you score between 0 to 25, a score in this range suggests that you're probably in a great stress shape. I wonder if anybody have that score. So if you're between 26 and 50, you're on moderate degree of stress. And if you're in a score between 51 and 75, moderate to high degree of stress. And if you're in a score of 76 to 100, you experience a very high degree of stress. So in that questionnaire and scores were taken from Huntington Institute. That's where I found that source. So interesting that most people probably have some sort of stress at this point in their life. I can imagine.
And
Hi, Donna. I'll mute you. Thank you for coming. I already start my presentation, so stay tight. I'll go back to my presentation and share slides. Okay, most of the people associate stress with something negative, but stress can be positive. For example, positive stress, or call it eustress, when you get a new job, you're very excited, that's a positive stress. So when you have a baby, even though it's a physical stress, but it's still very pleasant stress. Getting married, receiving an award, or winning a game, it's all good stress that we need in for our body. So a negative stress, it's called distress. When we lose our job, or we lose loved ones, or we lose money or house. Divorce, it's a negative stress. Being a caregiver for sick person or child. Physical or mental illness, as I mentioned before. Work demands, not balancing life, work kind of experiences. So there is a different type of stress. Stress is beneficial at some degree because it's vital warning system that we inherited from mammals. And you know that animals have a high stress in their life because who live in a wild life, and they have to have that system very well working to escape from the predators. In a survival, it's a survival mechanism that we inherited from animals from danger. Avoid car accident, for example. So you have to respond very fast and have very good stress response to prevent a car accident, or also defend ourselves in threatening situations. So it's all very needed mechanism in our body. Stress also can help us meet daily challenges, and I love challenges because sometimes we delay something to do, or we know that it's something good for us, but we don't do it. And I always sign up for different challenges. So that stimulates me and motivate me to do something. So it's become like when you have a deadline, sometimes it's better for me, not for everybody, but it stimulates me. So I always create or join challenges to meet some goals. It motivates us to reach our goals, as I said, and improves athletic performances. So a lot of athletes, they have high demand on their stress system because of the lot of exercise and training that they need, but it also helps them to reach their goals. Also, stress can even boost our memories, and in stressful situation, our memories working become very sharp to, for example, to answer something very quick, or we remember, or on some demanding situation, our memory become very sharp. So it's very helpful if we have good working health stress response system.
Yeah.
But anybody have questions? Somebody unmute yourself. So please mute back, and I will have a Q&A at the end. So if you can keep your questions. So to stress or not to stress, that's the question. And because stress can be beneficial and can be detrimental, what do we do? Do we need to stress, or we should not stress at all? This is a human function curve related to stress. As I said, stress can be beneficial until some point. And if we don't have any stress, for example, we don't exercise, we sit on our couch, we don't work, and we just stay home, it creates boredom, frustration, and dissatisfaction. And this is a very low stress life, or stress on a general level. So as stress goes up, healthy stress, we become creative, we have progress in our life, we make changes, and we live satisfactory life. And that call it the comfort zone of stress. So we need a little bit more to become motivated. That's a healthy stress response in our body. And if we admit somebody. Okay. My cursor doesn't work. I need to admit somebody 1 second. Okay. So when we go a little bit higher and get to optimal activity, and if we don't see that we become a little bit overstressed, like if we take too much on our plate, stress can become overwhelmed. So on the top, you see it's eustress, that's positive stress and optimal activity. If we go a little bit overboard with our everyday activities, like if our list for the day become too long, we go over the hump of a healthy stress, and stress become distress. So our body go to the stress mode. And at the first stage, I'm gonna go through all stages of stress later on, but we become fatigued, exhausted later on, and create anxiety, panic, anger, violence, ineffectiveness, and low self-esteem. That all comes with a distress in our life. So, and we create health problem and
What
burnout.
is it?
Guys, please mute yourself if you unmuted.
Face both of our name.
So, and it's the mental high stress. And some people, some people react differently to stress. why the same stressors can differ so much for one person and not for the other. Okay. All right. I want to make sure that everybody muted. Yes. Okay. Mute Kim. All right. One second. Everybody, sorry about that. I'm gonna leave this bar on, so because I have to go between screens and meet people. I'm by myself here, so stay with me. So stress, because I said that quoted stress wasn't very like exactly, stress is difficult to define because it is so different for each of us. A good example of that is roller coaster ride. Imagine yourself on a steep roller coaster ride along with other passenger. Some hunched down in the back seat, eyes shut, jaws clenched, and white knuckles holding on the bar. And they cannot wait to finish, to go back and escape from the torture chamber. But some people who like high risk, they're thrill seekers, they yelled and relish each step of that ride and race to get to the next ride. And there's some people between where you might find them nonchalant or even bored on that ride. So what passenger are you associate with? What seat do you take on that roller coaster ride? Are you in the back that you don't like to be in stressful situation, or you're a thrill seeker, you taking risk and like all that stressful and high demand of everyday life? And also there is interesting about different type of people. It comes from your genetics. Some people with high dopamine in the body, because they probably have genetic predisposition not to eliminate dopamine, or again, eliminate dopamine from the body. So they always low on dopamine and they're looking for situations that give them that rush of dopamine. So, and some people have too much dopamine in the body because their enzyme cannot clear dopamine from the body. So they're more prone to anxiety and they don't look for those thrill situations, thrill seekers. They're opposite to them. So there's also individuality, how we perceive stress. In a medical context, stress is physical, mental, or emotional factor that cause bodily or mental tension. And as I mentioned before about stress in my previous presentation on the summit, there is external stress and internal stressor. So external stress can be environment, as I said, environmental stressor. Food can be one of the stressors that our body have to deal with, like a toxic food, social situations, our family life, our work demand. Or internal stressor, we create a stressor in our own body through different metabolites that we cannot get rid of, or toxins that we cannot get rid of, physical illness, mental illness, medical procedure, medical implants, devices in our body, or even negative thinking can create internal stress. And it's all contribute to stress buckets that we have to deal with on a regular basis. So what is happening inside your body when you are stressed? There is a lot of happening in our body because stress is very complex. It's initiate complex reaction of neurologic and endocrinologic systems. So it's our nervous system is involved and also our endocrine system involved. Let's see how our nervous system involved in our body. And this is very complex system, And vagus nerve, it's main nerve that affect all that stress response system. So, and as you can see, that nerve goes into all organs in our body. Every organ is affected by that vagus nerve. That is number one nerve for all function. And if vagus nerve stimulated during the stress response, all organs are affected. And the same way, because vagus nerve is it has both ways, like from central nervous system, from the brain goes to all organs, and the same, all organs send signals through vagus nerve to the brain. So it's bidimensional, so it goes up and goes down. And if we have problem in any organs, that vagus nerve sense that something is wrong and sends signals up to the brain. And that's how physical or illness affect the stress system. So our system, those autonomic nervous system, I would call it. Autonomic means that it's all system that belong to that autonomic nervous system. It's happening unconsciously. We cannot control like how our heartbeat or how our liver perform. So it's happening without our knowing. That's called automatic. So body takes care of that function. That's why I call it automatic. But automatic nervous system divided to sympathetic and parasympathetic. So that has two arms. Sympathetic nervous system, that's what affect our fight and flight response. So when it's activated through stress response, so when we have a stress event, it's activated sympathetic nervous system. It creates fight or flight response and also start stimulating norepinephrine and epinephrine. And that is neurotransmitters that responsible for symptoms like heart rate, increased heart rate and blood pressure, increased respiratory rate and brachial dilation. So we become hyperventilated, increase glycogen to glucose in liver. So it's increase glucose in the blood. Also pupil diameter increase and GI activities decrease. So motility of the GI tract decrease. All these symptoms you probably associate at least once in your lifetime when you were exposed to stress. So you feel your heart rate up and your blood pressure and pulse and even breathing change, your breathing change. And you cannot detect, but your glucose probably went up in any stressful situation. And parasympathetic nervous system, it's opposite to sympathetic. And it's happening mostly at night when we relax, when we sleep. That's how sleep is very effective in restoring our stress response system and build our resiliency. So it's a rest and restoration. That's a function of parasympathetic nervous system. And during that stimulation or activation, acetylcholine, it's a neurotransmitter release. And our heart rate decrease, blood pressure decrease, respiratory rate decrease. So that's a slow breathing. Glucose goes down because of decreased glucose from glycogen in the liver. Papillary constriction and GI activity increase. So when we can process food. So all this system supposed to work in balance. After stressful event, for example, look at the animal, the fight or flight response. Every time we have the same activation system as animal. Can you imagine animal get chased by the tiger or any predators? So they activate flight response system, sympathetic response system, and try to get away from the predators. So when it's flight or fight response, dissipate quickly by overriding and change it to parasympathetic nervous system. And in animal, it's happening very fast, and that's how we design. So with any acute stress, we're supposed to come back to that parasympathetic part of our stress response system. So, but what's happening in real life, particularly with everyday stressors, we cannot go back to that relaxing stage as our mammals or our friends, animals. So, and I'll tell you later what's happened with chronic stress. But there is also another part of parasympathetic nervous system or response to stress. Sometimes fight or flight is not enough because we cannot get away or we cannot fight what's happened. It's happened a freeze response or pretend death response. And this actually system was discovered recently. Particularly when researchers were looking at post-traumatic stress disorder, and recently was discovered a polyvagal theory of stress, and reptilian vagus was found. It's a part of parasympathetic nervous system that was first developed millions of years ago and activated in extreme stress. So with acute extreme threat situation, like near-death experience, we activate that reptilian vagus reaction. What's happened, it's parasympathetic nervous system become activated too much. So what's happened, it's bradycardia. Bradycardia, it's when your pulse become very, very low, almost none. It's profound. It's called profound bradycardia. Also, freeze. We cannot move. Our muscle become like frozen, and we collapse. Usually, people faint. Sorry. And low blood pressure, almost non-detectable. And those reptilian vagus respond save a lot of people from near-death experiences or very extreme stress situation. One of the examples are soldiers on a battlefield or any victim that in any stressful state or near-death experiences. So when person looks like person is dead, and it's not, a pulse is not detectable, breathing is not detectable, and person looks like that, but really because person went to reptilian vagus reaction, that's what is happening. And sometimes it saves people life because if predator leave that person alone and feel that person is dead, so it get away and person actually revive itself, but it's because it was in that reptilian vagus brain. And what's happened in post-traumatic stress disorder, because people experience that near-death experiences or extreme threatening situation, they went to that reptilian brain, vagus response. But what's a negative part of that response is it's decreased sympathetic nervous system. So it's override sympathetic nervous system, and person always stay for a long time chronically in that reptilian vagus. So chronic or perceived extreme stress it's become like general inhibition syndromes. So person become hopeless and avoidance happening. So persistent in post-traumatic stress disorder that is very difficult to overcome, and it's very difficult to treat. And that is a new theory, and it's called polyvagal theory of stress. Before we knew only about two branches of vagal nerve. Now we know about this reptilian vagus nerve pathway. So just interesting fact for you, and this is a new research, so I wanted very passionate to share with you. So that's one. Okay, so, and that's what I just explained in a slide. So how stress affect our endocrine system? And that is called hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. What's happened in that system? Stimulated by the internal or external stressors, neurons in the hypothalamus and subsequently in a pituitary gland secrete hormones that stimulate cortisol production in adrenal glands. So it's first hypothalamus, stimulated pituitary, and pituitary stimulated adrenals, and it's called HPA axis. Brain and adrenal connection is called hypothalamus pituitary adrenal. And it's very important in understanding the stress effect on the body and how stress reduction method works. So that's why very important to include any stress management techniques with some brain exercise, mental exercise. It's not only physical body response, but it's also brain activation. So what's happened after brain is stimulated? What's happened in adrenal? Adrenal is two-in-one endocrine gland. It has both two parts. It has, they're sitting on the top of the kidney. This is adrenal. And they have a medulla. Medulla, that's where the neurological branch of that response system happen and stimulate norepinephrine and epinephrine neurotransmitters. They stimulate it in medulla, in adrenal medulla part. And we just talk about the neurological part, and the cortex, where stimulated cortisol and DHEA. So cortisol is glucocorticoid hormones synthesized from cortisol in adrenals. Note there, one of the important reasons, eat the right fat that contains good cholesterol is very, very important. So when doctor tells you that you have a high cholesterol and don't tell you anything else about your cholesterol, sometimes it's a good thing, because we need cholesterol to create not only cortisol, but all hormones, because most of the hormones come from cholesterol. And I'll show you the system, how it's created. Normally expressed at the highest level in the early morning, cortisol main function is to restore homeostasis following exposure to stress. So when when our body perceives stress, usually it's in our brain, as I said, that by the vagal nerve. Its brain sends signals to adrenal, stimulate cortisol from the fat, from the cholesterol, and effect of cortisol are felt all over the entire body and impact several homeostatic mechanisms. Homeostasis is equilibrium of the physiological processes in the body. It means that everything in the body is supposed to be in balance. If something goes off the balance, our body have mechanisms to bring it back to balance, like our pH, our temperature when we get sick. We know that we have a high fever, and our body try to dissipate that fever by creating chills and heat in our body, so bring that temperature down. Same with glucose. When sugar goes up in the body, this pancreas express insulin to bring that glucose back. Same with oxygen and CO2. So everything is in balance in the body. Same with stress system. If stress system goes up, we need to bring it down with different neurological and endocrinological responses. And DHEA in the adrenal and cortisol always work in unison. As I said, it's supposed to be in balance. So when we have a stress, as I say, hypothalamus stimulate adrenal stimulating hormone that affect adrenals. So if cortisol goes up, DHEA goes down. And to bring cortisol down, DHEA is supposed to go up. That's how the balance, the dance in the adrenals happen. And let's look what's happened if you have too much stress in the body. It's affect all other hormonal system, and I call it pregnenolone still. What's a pregnenolone? Pregnenolone is a precursor of all hormones in the body that made from fat. So fat, it's a cholesterol. From cholesterol, pregnenolone happen, metabolize cholesterol, create a pregnenolone. It can go, pregnenolone is a precursor to many hormones in the body. So it can go this way and create progesterone. It can go this way and create DHEA, which is very important because it's a precursor of hormones as a testosterone. And from the testosterone, estrogens goes this way. And also from DHEA, we can create estrogens for the female, and through testosterone and estradiol for male. Also, if pregnenolone goes this way, it creates cortisol. So what's happened if we have too much stress and we need a lot of cortisol? Pregnenolone can go this way and create testosterone. So this section can be difficult to achieve because there is too much demand for cortisol. And also pregnenolone cannot go this way and produce progesterone because too much demand for cortisol. If cortisol needed in a body too much because it's a number one concern for the body at any stressful event, we cannot produce progesterone. We become low progesterone, and we know how it's important for a particular female health, and also decrease testosterone and estrogens production because DHEA become low. So as you can see, stress, in particular high cortisol, affect other hormonal system in the body. So let's look at the cortisol function besides hormonal. What else? It stimulates gluconeogenesis, cortisol. So high cortisol stimulate gluconeogenesis. What does it mean, gluconeogenesis? So when when sugar demand, because sugar is energy in the body, and in high stress, we need a lot of energy. So when there is not enough sugar in the body, we start create sugar from proteins and from fat. So cortisol stimulate gluconeogenesis. Decrease insulin because we need to keep up with sugar in the body to give energy to our cells, to our muscles, to our brain. And that's why insulin become low, because if high insulin, low sugar in the body. So cortisol, high cortisol stimulate insulin. And what's happened with chronic stress, if we decrease insulin, we become insulin resistant. And sugar in the body increase all the time, and we become pre-diabetic. So it's one of the reasons chronic stress can cause pre-diabetes, metabolic inflexibility in the body. Also, cortisol affect ions regulation to prevent cell from losing sodium, and also regulate pH in the body. So we become mineral deficient because all of those stressors, chronic stressor, that create as disbalance, ion disbalance or mineral disbalance. Decrease the body immune response by blocking T cells, and T cells inhibit responsible, of course, for our immune responses. And we know that cortisol, it's a glucocorticoid, and it's used in medicine to decrease inflammation. It's meant to decrease immune response. And what happened in chronic cortisol activation in chronic stress, our immune system always low, and we become predisposed to many different infections, viruses, bacteria, because our immune system is suppressed due to high cortisol. Also, cortisol needed for thyroid function. And if cortisol is high, it inhibits thyroid hormone activation, because in our thyroid gland, conversion cannot happen if there is high cortisol. So it prevents conversion T4, which is non-active thyroid hormone, to active T3. And sometimes it does not show on the blood, but because that system happening on a glandular level, on endocrine level. So it not always shows in the blood test. If we don't test specific T4 and T3, or free T3 and reverse T3. So it can be, the functional testing can be pinpoint all this dysfunction in the thyroid regulation system, but not on a regular blood testing. Chronic cortisol can increase leptin, and in leptin involved in regulation of food intake and also intake and body fat storage. So if leptin increase, our food intake increase, and we accumulate more fat in our body because that system becomes dysregulated. And if I said that acute stress of in acute cortisol increase can stimulate brain function in acute stress, but with chronic stress, what happened, it's opposite reaction. We lose our memory and memory loss and long-term memory and short-term memory because of the chronic increase of cortisol. So how does acute stress become chronic? Why we cannot be that zebra or that animal that reverse back to the parasympathetic nervous system? So what happened? Perception of stress is influenced by our own experiences, genetics, and behaviors, our coping mechanism. When the brain perceives any stress, it can be eustress, real or imaginary threat, psychological and behavioral processes are initiated to bring body back to homeostasis. And in this picture shows that. So perception of stress, we see it's environmental stressors, trauma or abuse, major life events. And how we perceive stress depends our experiences in our life. So individual differences, and that's why we have different reaction to stress. So it can be genetic, as I explained before, also how we grown up, how our experience in our childhood create our perception of different stressors and our experiences throughout our life. If we had many traumatic events throughout our life, particularly in childhood, it's called adverse childhood experiences, and there's a lot of research done on that topic, how ACEs or adverse childhood experiences affect your physical and mental health in the future. So that's how we perceive stress, from our individual differences and our individual experiences. And sometimes we perceive the same stress differently. Some people react to the same stressors, so to threat, or some of them feel hopeless or become vigilant. And that stimulate that sympathetic nervous system and hormonal response. So it's physiological responses. And allostasis, it's a stress bucket. It's like a lot of stressors affect the stress system. So it's called allostasis. Allostasis, when we bring that stress response back to normal. And all stressors become a bucket. It's called allostatic load. Instead of stress, toxic load, it's called allostatic load, when all stressors become as one. And our normal mechanism become adapted to that. And that's how I call resiliency. So perceived stress, and we respond to that perceived stress differently, again, based on all individuals and how we individually perceive that stress. And that create our behavioral response. So it's mean coping mechanism. How do we cope with that perceived stress? Perceived or real stress? So we activate fight or flight response, or we activate some unhealthy coping mechanism like smoking, drinking, or we become over-exercise, or we eat healthy or unhealthy. So there's a different coping mechanism that we activate based on our individual experiences and how we perceive stress and what coping mechanism we adapted through our life. And through those coping mechanisms, again, we activate physiological response. So we activate parasympathetic nervous system to bring back that sympathetic nervous system to balance. And it's called resiliency. So if you would like to share your coping mechanism, how do you cope with stressors if you perceive any stressful situation in your life? can you put in the chat what are your coping mechanisms? How do you cope with any stressful situation? Does it matter? It can be emotional stress, physical stress, environmental stress. So I would like to hear from you and put in your chat, how do you cope with stress? I'll give you a few seconds and I sip some water. Okay, let's see. Anita said, I swim. Kim said, I read, also do puzzles. So it's a good coping mechanism to distract your brain from the stressful situation. Okay, so I used to have unhealthy coping mechanism. And one of those unhealthy coping mechanisms were drinking glass of wine when I get home from stressful work or too much demand at work. Also, I used to eat a lot of sweets. I couldn't pass any sweet table, any sweets if I see them somewhere on the counter or somebody bring some, tasty, unhealthy cakes, cookies. So I couldn't pass them. I had to have that. It's probably my body demand energy, sugar, but because I didn't have a healthy work-life balance and I had too much stress. So that's how I cope. And that's called unhealthy coping mechanism. And what I adapted, it's a healthy coping mechanism. For example, breathing, meditation, mindfulness, yoga, and other practices. And we'll talk a little bit more about them later on. Thank you for sharing. So we'll continue. Chronic level of high stress might disrupt the delicate feedback balance, resulting in the failure to stop cortisol production and subsequently hypercortisolemia. So it's become cortisol in the body become high, very high in the blood, and this is I'm talking about 3 stages of body response system to chronic stress. And when cortisol become very high, we start experiencing physical effects of chronic stress and those physical symptoms in the body. Remember those neurological symptoms that epinephrine and norepinephrine produce: high blood pressure, high glucose level. So, and if we test cortisol in that stage, it's the first stage of the chronic stress. It's called hypercortisol, like first stage, and it has a high cortisol in the blood. And if we test it, we will find it. So this is a normal. It's a gray area. It's a normal cortisol response. So in the first stage, cortisol become very high, particularly in the morning. And in the morning, it's actually the highest cortisol supposed to be in the morning, but it's not as high as in this first stage. So this is a normal. And with day goes on, it become low. So if you want anything to do or high demand mentally and physically, you best bet to do it in the morning when we have a high cortisol response and when high stress response. So we can do anything in the early morning stage if our response to stress system works properly. So particular exercise and any demanding challenges, it's the best, normally it's the best to do in the morning. And with day, cortisol goes down. By noon, it's probably lowest. and it goes a little bit up to the afternoon and goes again very low at night. When cortisol is very low at night, it means that we are ready for bed and we don't need as much energy. And this is the lowest point. And when we prepare for sleep. So in the first stage, cortisol is very high. It still goes down, but not to the normal low. And it goes even lower at afternoon, but it's increase at night. So we become very energetic at night, and it's like Superman complex, but it's happening more at night when we need to go to bed. In the second stage, what's happened? It's a back loop. So our body sees that cortisol is always high and it tries to overcome it. And hypothalamus start to reduce production of glucocorticoid response hormone and try to low down cortisol production in adrenals. So it's become low, become to normal range. But what's happening, it try to go up in the afternoon because you're still in a high stress response. So it still become high more than normal in the afternoon, give you like a second wind and becomes low at night. So it's also abnormal response of the cortisol. And you feel cranky sometimes because, and this is probably where anxiety started in the second stage. So, and in that stage also, different hormonal system become abnormal due to high cortisol demand, and as I show you previously, how it's affect as a hormonal system. So it's a regular rhythm of cortisol. And in the last stage of that chronic demand on our stress response system, everything become low. So body still compensating for high cortisol, and it's shut down in the hypothalamus, our production of cortisol in adrenal. So cortisol become very low and low and low and low. And I would say that is a stage of depression. So it's also affect other hormonal system, thyroid become low, and other hormonal system like reproductive system, hormones become very low. So as you can see, our body demand, chronic demand can affect other hormonal system, other body system, and how it's compensated for chronic stress. So there is a different stages, and it's not happening in one day. It can take long time, but eventually it will break down the system. And at that point, you probably see a lot of doctors for many different health problems, thyroid, reproductive, women's health, any possible chronic conditions. But if you come to the doctor in this stage or this stage, it might not be diagnosable yet. You might have a lot of symptoms, but not chronic disease yet. So wear and tear on body cause a chronic stress, as I just mentioned. So this is just some symptoms that can be affected by chronic high stress demand. Immune function decrease, and we have a lot of different infections, viruses, predisposition to cold and other chronic infections. Metabolic syndrome, pre-diabetes and diabetes can be created or started at that stage. Hormonal imbalances, hypertension, atherosclerosis, increased platelet reactivity or thrombosis, prone to thrombotic disease like DVT and even stroke. Abdominal obesity because of the leptin dysregulation, bone demineralization, it means you losing a bone tissue, and due to iron deficiency. Atrophy of neurons in hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, so that's when we lose our memory, and increased activity of amygdala, emotional center. So From anxiety in the second stage, we become depressed in the last stage. And at that point, if you go to see a doctor with anxiety, what they prescribe you, anti-anxiety medication. But really, you probably in the second stage of adrenal insufficiency, adrenal fatigue. And depression is antidepressant, again prescribed, but what is really the root cause of the depression, it might be a chronic stress. So how stressed are you today? And if you look at your stress score, you probably saw how stressed are you. And we all probably need to improve our stress response. So what are your coping mechanism? And we talk about it. And interesting, overall, so how do we cope with our stress? What are your coping mechanism? Interesting fact, American Psychological Association report in 2014, overall Americans appear to be caught in a vicious cycle where they manage stress in unhealthy ways and seemingly overwhelmed barriers prevent them from making the lifestyle or behavioral changes necessary for good health. 1 in 5 Americans say they never engage in activity to help relieve or manage their stress. This is old statistics, and I took it from my book when I was researching for on the topic of stress, because one of the chapter in my book is on the stress, on this stress topic. So how do we build a muscle against stress? And I would say stress is not what it happened to you, but how you react to what happened. And I talk already about how one person perceived stress differently from another person, and it's based on everything that affected you previously, maybe your genetic predisposition, or maybe your childhood experiences, and a lot of different experiences that you accumulate throughout life. So let's talk about how can we overcome stressful situation, because let's look from the neurological perspective, because vagus nerve, it's how we perceive stress and how it brings stressors to the brain. We might work on the vagus nerve and to stimulate in parasympathetic vagus nerve system. And if to do so, interesting practices that we can implement in our life. So vagus nerve stimulation, particularly parasympathetic part of vagus nerve stimulation, can be done due to by gargling, chanting, humming, singing, or tapping. And this is very easy practices that we can implement in our life on everyday basis. Interesting information and fact about gargling. When I was in medical school and attending one lecture, I think it was professor of gastroenterology. I don't remember the context that he was talking about gargling, but he said, if you do gargling, it can be very good for your health. I don't remember context of what about he was talking about, but I started doing gargling 25 years ago. And it's easy to do when you brush your teeth. You already use water in your mouth and you just gargle that water. And I always gargle twice a day for the last 25 years. And that's probably can help me with my parasympathetic nervous system, balance it. And I didn't know before why I was doing it, but apparently intuitively, I knew that I needed. So, and it's very easy to do, at least twice a day. Chanting and humming, it's very easy. Singing is pleasant, so just sing more. When you're driving in the car, put the music on and you can sing. And the tapping, emotional tapping techniques is very popular now. There is a lot of classes, and I will be teaching tapping for my group. Also, I taught tapping my younger daughter. At some point, I think last year, she was very stressed about something, and I practiced tapping on her. And now she asks me tap for her every time that she has challenges, like maybe a headache and some pain or some stressful situation. And sometimes you can do tapping without even words that emotional tapping techniques usually use. So it's very useful, and it's immediate. It has immediate results. And if you do it on a regular basis, you protect your stress response system from overstimulation. Also, big role of oxytocin in our stress response system. Research a lot recently, particularly. Release of oxytocin is stimulated by pleasant stimuli. So oxytocin release when we engage in touch, especially massage is very stimulating for oxytocin release. Intimacy, consensual sexual activity, warm temperature like a warm bath, vibration, all kind of vibration, like a tapping is one of the vibrations. So all those gargling and singing, it's all vibration. Also vibrational through um, music, vibration, also sound, healing, again, massage, vibration. Also, there is a different electromagnetic stimulation. It's also vibration. Acupuncture also stimulate oxytocin, and olfactory clues like aromatherapy also can stimulate oxytocin. Special interactions like with circle of friends or interest groups, social interaction increase oxytocin. And also positive experiences through different images, movies, comedies, pleasant pictures, vacations with pleasant picturesque environment. And that's why visualization practices and guided imagery and reconditioning is very useful to overcome chronic stress and rebuild a resiliency. How to become resilient? As you can see, stress response is a very complex process that involves many systems in the body. We need to support those systems in order to bounce back quickly to restore allostatic or equilibrium with optimal nutrition and lifestyle. And as from that uh, legged stool, as you can see, we can implement all those lifestyle and nutritional choices that bring that three-legged stool in balance. So our genetic expression, we can manage if we know our genes, also microbiome, if we feed our bags proper food, and stressors, if we eliminate stressors from our body. Second, we need to be equipped with healthy coping skills that can be used in acute stressful situation or shift our stress response. So we need to learn different coping skills, and some of them I showed today. And last, there are different types of stressor that we get bombarded with every day. And if your stress bucket is overflowed and you experience signs and symptoms of adrenal exhaustion or other hormonal imbalances, the next best thing would be to stop putting log on the fire. What I mean is stop adding more stressors to your already full stress bucket. And some of the internal and external stresses are very obvious and familiar, and some of them I mentioned throughout the summit, some of them I mentioned here in the presentation, and others are hidden and unknown. So you learn a lot at the summit about environmental stressors, physical stressors, and emotional stressors that you might be contribute to the stress bucket day after day. So if you would like to know how to minimize exposure to external stressors, how to eliminate them from your environment and your body, and how to make your body bulletproof against stress, and how to build your mental resiliency, If you would say yes, I would like to invite you to my 12 weeks group program that starts on April 6th. And if you join our program, and what that program can do, it's and what's included, it has a step-by-step process to build your defense system, help you create positive and lifelong habits. It keeps you motivated to make changes. It has a support you need from me and the group. It offers connections to community of like-minded people. And if you sign up for this rebuild uh, resiliency group program, you get 50% of DNA testing. And in DNA testing, you will be tested for all genes and some genes that you can modify through lifestyle and nutrition. It comes with my 1 hour consultation when you get your test results back. When we go through the all genes that you can help with through lifestyle and nutrition. Also, it has a discount on some lab testing and supplements, and free access to live cooking classes during that program, and bi-weekly prizes. And what include in the program, we meet twice a month with presentation and Q&A. We have a guest speakers during that 12-week programs, and also some cool stuff that we do together, like cooking classes. And before we go to that, so on that, you can sign up today. And normally that program costs $997, but for you who came today to the presentation and for people who attend the summit, it's $297 for 12 weeks. If you bring a friend, you get $100 back. If you bring 2 friends, you get $200 back. So join with a friend who can be your accountability partner, because when you do something in a group, you're more accountable, and it's very easier to make lifestyle changes when you work together in a group. And you have my support because I'm always in a group, and we have a Facebook group if you on a Facebook. If it's not, it's through the email and connection with 2 Q&A per month. So this is my offer to you. Before we come to the conclusion, I would like to have this relaxation method for emergency offer to you. And it's very easy to do. It's a deep breathing exercise. This technique is relatively fast acting. You can overcome any stress situation right away. Use it as needed to feel better quickly, and also practice it regularly over time. And also, if you use it all the time, it can be as your tool to overcome any challenges. And also, if you do it for longer time, it becomes like a part of meditation. It can help you to sleep better. So let's, before we start that practice, I would like to do some test. If you want to start that breathing exercise, I would like you to do the test. So how test works: put 1 palm of your hand on your chest and another on your belly. So 1 on the chest and 1 on the belly. And breathe normally, how you usually breathe. What hand does rise when you inhale? On inhalation, which hand rise first? On the chest or on the belly? Notice that. And if one rise on the chest, that means you have a shallow breathing. And if on your inhale, the hands on the belly rise first, it's a deep breathing and you breathe properly. So hands on the belly is supposed to rise first, because diaphragmatic breathing or deep breathing, sorry, it's very helpful to stimulate vagus nerve that goes through your abdomen. So when we expand our diaphragm, that's when we stimulate our parasympathetic nervous system or vagus nerve. And when we exhale through the lung, and our hands on the lung supposed to expand. So try to breathe from the stomach. When you inhale, extend your stomach and your hand will be raised. When you exhale, your stomach should be suck in, and you exhale. So inhale, stomach out, and inhale, stomach in. When you inhale on a count to 4, and exhale on a count to 6 or 8. Why it's important? Because when we inhale, we stimulate our sympathetic nervous system, and when we exhale, when we stimulate our parasympathetic nervous system. So parasympathetic should be longer, stimulation longer than sympathetic. And that's how we can balance and bring parasympathetic nervous system higher up. So, and we balance our stress response. So sympathetic, inhale on count of 4, and parasympathetic, exhale on a count of 8. And let's try that, and we'll do it 3 times. So let your air out from the mouth, slowly inhale through your nose, counting to 4 in your head. And as you inhale, let your abdomen expand outward rather than raising your shoulder. Let your air out from your mouth, counting to 8 in your head, and it lifts your lung. Contract your abdomen while you exhale. So this deep breathing is more natural and similar how babies breathe. So, and repeat that 3 times. Let's do it again. Inhale on the count of 4 through your nose, and exhale on the count of 8 through your mouth. And one more. Inhale on the count of 4, and exhale on the count of 8. And one more time. Inhale and exhale. Okay, thank you. I hope you feel all relaxed at this point. So what's next? Next, take action. And welcome you to sign for my Rebuild Resiliency program. It's a 12 weeks program. And another bonuses, if you sign up today, you get one-on-one, 1 hour consultation personal with me. And if you sign up today, at the end of the day, you get that bonus. It's for fast acting people who act today. And I'm gonna put in the chat the sign in link. So you can click on the link and sign it today. If you wanna bring a guest, please let me know. I give you a special discount code for that, and you can save $200 or $100 when you bring a friend. So I'm just trying to post it here. Oh, no. If anybody would like to share anything here, how was your experience? If you learned something new through my presentation, put it in the chat. I'm trying to post it here. Oh, no. Cannot do post. And how the Mark Twain said, the secret of getting ahead is getting started. So go ahead and start your life changing experiences. And one last question, why would you want to build resiliency? And this is my answer, my family. That's why I built my resiliency and try to have a healthy lifestyle, because I need to be here for my kids. And this is my answer, why I'm take action steps every day. I'm trying to post it. Any questions for me? Thank you for the presentation. So post your question, or you can unmute yourself to question. I'm trying to put the link. Build. Okay, try this. Because my copy did not work. So anybody, question? Unmute yourself, ask question, or you want to share your experience with your stress coping mechanism? No. Okay. Anyone? I'm gonna send the link through the email because I couldn't post it here properly. So sorry about that. But if you sign up today, you get discounts and special bonus. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and show up for you. So let's talk about stress. How guys you cope with stress, and what would be your next step for your stress coping? Anyone? Okay, if anyone want to put some questions, put it in the chat now. Otherwise, we will be finishing in a few minutes. And thank you again for your time. I hope you learned something today. And if you want to put any comments, put it now. And we will be closing soon. And recording will be available. I will send it to your emails along with sign up for my 12 weeks group program. All right, thank you very much, everybody. And have a good rest of the weekend. Thank you. Bye-bye.